Hey everyone, this is Colin once again, doing my first rebuttal to Jay Smith, whose channel is called Pfander Films. Um, the topic is what it says on the other side of the screen there. The topic of have verses been added to the New Testament in the Quran? Now, this video actually spawned the two Muslims, Isa and Abdullah, to with their film productions to do a rebuttal based on is the Bible corrupt? Their whole 10, 12 part film or films series talked about this subject. However, they skipped over one important theological point, which I want to point out in my rebuttal to this video. This is going to be a short rebuttal because I'm going to talk about Jay's sequel to this video in my next rebuttal. However, first off, I want to mention something that Jay, you really put me to shame on this one, my friend. I'm really sorry to have to tell you this, but as I've said in one of my other videos, you claim to be a scholar of Islam, or you say you've studied Islam for 25 years, and yet this really surprises me that someone of your caliber is making these really simple mistakes that I would argue this could be too generalizing, that a 2-year-old who is Muslim would know the answer to this. Right. You mentioned this book right here. I have a copy of it, all 9 volumes. Sahaba al-Bukhari, the Hadith collection. This is volume 6. You reference this hadith in these 2 videos of yours. And in doing so, you bring up the point that the Muslims, during the Caliph Uthman's period, burned parts of the Quran that, in your words, he didn't like. However, then you just basically, you make a really funny statement, Jay. You actually say that this is the only time, this is where the 2-year-old Muslim analogy comes in, this is the only time during Uthman's time that the Quran was written down. Jay, I don't know if you know this, but in the hadith right before the one talking about the Caliph Uthman, it talks about the Caliph Abu Bakr. And you being an Islamic scholar, I'm sure you know who Abu Bakr is, the first caliph, the first successor to Muhammad, the father-in-law of Muhammad. And he, according to the hadith right before the one about Uthman, is the one who's responsible for actually compiling the Quran as it's mentioned in the Hadith, which was written upon palm leaf stalks, stones, and other materials during the Prophet Muhammad's time. So the Quran was being written down when Muhammad was alive. Then it was compiled in a book format during Abu Bakr's time. And then we get into your famous Hadith about the Caliph Uthman. Now, you do not give any historical background to this hadith. Instead, you say that Uthman, there was a lot of variations. You give a lot of Arthur Jennings, or Jeffries, excuse me. I'd love for you if you could send me links to the articles written by this man, because I couldn't find any of his articles or published works. If you could help me with that, Jay. And you say that Arthur Jeffries, I believe his name, you say talked about that there were different variations of Qurans during Uthman's time. The hadiths sort of mention this. They mention that during this time, the historical background, the people of Iraq and another group were fighting each other. And during these battles, they were reciting passages from that they claimed were part of the Quran that were not recognized by the other Muslims. So the ambassadors come to Uthman and say, Caliph, people are reciting parts of the Quran they claim are parts of the Quran, but we know that they're not. We do not recognize them. So Uthman, in his wisdom, asks for the copy of the Quran that was written down during Abu Bakr's time to be brought to him. Then, as you did say, has 4 men make copies of this authoritative canon of the Quran. They make copies and they send them out to the capitals of these areas. And in doing so, Uthman says, once you have these authoritative copies, if anybody has written down an extra chapter or any variant, burn it. So, Jay, the way you told this story was very different. First, you made a very gross historical and Islamic scholarly error, if I can say that, by saying that the Quran was not written down until this time of Uthman. I actually went back and rewatched that part because I wanted to make sure I was quoting you correctly. You do say that. Maybe you made a mistake, but it is recorded in the Hadiths in the same book. Sahih al-Bukhari, Volume 6. By the way, you say it's Hadith number 505 to 510. It's not. I don't know what version or what translation of the Hadiths you're using, Jay. This is like Hadith 4,984, not 505 to 510. So, I'm sorry. But, you know, the fact of the matter is that you try and equate this burning to what was done in Christendom. Here's the different analogy. They had an authorized, written down Quran just as soon as Muhammad, and an authoritative as Abu Bakr as the time of Abu Bakr. So they make these copies and they burn these other copies because they don't go along with the authoritative Quran that was around during Muhammad's time and finally penned in a book format during Abu Bakr's time. Christianity was different. You had these bishops who, either by a vote or because they were in charge, they disliked the other gospels written by other groups, other Christian groups such as the Gnostics, who you mentioned briefly, and other early Christians such as the Aryans and things of these people. They disliked these other people's beliefs. So instead of just ignoring them, they destroyed them. And people had to put them in hiding, which is why we have the Nag Hammadi text, or this book I have right here, the Essential Gnostic Gospels. And I'm going to talk more about this idea of burning things, burning documents in Christianity, because you addressed this in your other video, which I will be responding to next. But Jay, these are two separate scenarios, two different historical situations that you seem to want to equate. And in your video that I'm refuting here, you say you admit that these are things that happen in Christianity, but then you say when you put them next to Quran, they end up being much worse. Well, they end up being much worse if you yourself falsely take them out of the context of the Hadith, the book that they reside in, and then you twist them around and you try to make them something that they're not, and you add some things by a scholar, only one scholar that you mentioned, which I couldn't find his information, which is completely my fault, but please show me where you're getting his information from, because frankly, the Hadiths speak for themselves. The Quran was around during Muhammad's time, written on whatever material they could find, then published or as a book during Abu Bakr's reign, and then finally authorized under Uthman. So, thank you. I'm here to clear up this confusion. Thank you very much. I'll be making the next video shortly. Thank you, and peace.